right, great. Hi, everybody. So we are here to talk about how Skynet will take over our jobs, right? That was the robot emoji, right, that you had there. That was Skynet. No, so just like how you would think about Skynet and AI, it's a very big topic. It's a very generic topic. People say, let me slap on AI into something we do, and it's going to make everything better, it's going to make it smarter, and it's going to replace us. And I think that's something that maybe in the future is going to come, but I don't know that we're actually there yet. So today we're going to be talking more about machine learning, which is a specific topic within AI. And it's really used more for your sort of tactical uses on specific applications. So we're going to talk more about that. So by way of quick introduction, as you heard, I manage our email marketing strategy at the New York Times for our consumer revenue group. And that means that I focus on how do we acquire customers, how do we retain customers, and win back customers via the email channel, and really leveraging it to the best that we can. So I'm going to hand it over to the to the panelists to also introduce themselves as well.
I'm Anna from Square. You guys know me.
I'm Anitra from Capital One. I manage a team of designer developers, and we take care of all of the code base for the entire enterprise of Capital One emails.
Hey guys, I'm Allison Kelly, Director of Channel Growth at Cordial. I actually get to look at a ton of different types of technologies as part of my job. So if you have questions about like machine learning technologies as a whole, that is part of my job is just to analyze those, take a look at them, think about how we could work with them too. But really cool that I get to be able to work with both brand side marketers and technology vendors as part of the role. And it keeps me on my toes and keeps me learning, so it's fun.
Awesome. So quick show of hands, how many people use machine learning today in their programs? Okay, a little less than half. So let's see what we can do to maybe increase that in the coming year. So one of the first things I want to talk about is thinking about where we apply machine learning. Like where in your marketing program, your marketing strategy, can we really start thinking about where you apply? So we heard from Anna, we can think about cross-sell, we can think about time of day. So I want to kind of ask them, what do you guys think? Where are some places additionally that we can be thinking about? What can the audience take away and say, I'm going to go back home and I'm going to think about, hey, I can actually apply this here? Yeah.
Something that we did is kind of looked at where can we get a better customer experience if we were able to be more targeted, and thinking about that through could we target better with machine learning. Something that we noticed is if you subscribe to an alert for your account with Capital One, you get that alert by email, by SMS, and by push, all three, all the time. And that's not a great customer experience. For some things like fraud, people do want all three places, but once they respond, they don't want to see the other one. And we end up causing confusion because if you respond in one place, it doesn't mean that you don't get the other communications. So we really looked at it from a starting point. How can we better some of our customer experience by implementing technologies that can do things better than we can?
Yeah, a lot of the things that we see at Cordial, especially as it relates to machine learning and testing with machine learning, is using machine learning for optimization. Anna, you mentioned some of that, like you guys are optimizing on send time, you're taking a look at when people are engaging and then thinking through like when do we actually send to them. One of the things that we are able to do and that we see clients like Quibids as an example, which is a micro auction site that we work with, is optimizing across triggers, testing on things simultaneously like subject lines, like content, like hero images, and it's kind of like multivariate testing on steroids, but then allowing that machine learning element and experiments to learn over time and then choose automatically and pull together what types of content, subject lines, and hero images are working down to that individual subscriber level. Some of you, and I'm going to ask a question to the audience. Kevin, I didn't preface this, I'm sorry. But how many of you guys actually test on your automated messages or your triggers? Can you raise your hand? How many of you test more than once a year on like an abandoned cart message? Can you raise your hand? All right, so it's less than half. A lot of people don't test on triggered messages because the level of effort that it takes to actually test to optimize those is too intense to produce some type of statistical significance. I see you're nodding your head back there in the back. I see you like going like that. It's true. And so how do you think about testing with optimization and testing on the fly and doing it without having that much level of effort that goes into it? Those are some new technologies that are out there today that actually allow you to pull those types of elements together and test without you having to go in and recreate a template or recreate your process every single time. So we see a lot of brands that are doing that, and with Quibids as an example, because they're a micro-auction site, their inventory changes all the time, it's selling out, and they need to be able to reach people instantaneously. So they have 200 different triggered messages that we're programmatically optimizing, leveraging machine learning to produce the right type of message with the right content and the right type of offer, even down to that individual subscriber level.
That's great. And I think we heard a lot about, being in real time and acting quickly on things to take advantage of it to get the best conversion gains out of something like that. So machine learning can definitely apply somewhere there. So on the flip side, any thoughts on where machine learning maybe is not a great place to apply, like where maybe we think we haven't matured yet as the technology itself, or where we think it's really not best applied?
Well, I can't speak for everybody. For us, it's content. We just have not even gotten anywhere close to even defining how to do that. So right now we're focusing on like our biggest challenges. So our biggest challenge was we have a lot of products and a lot of customers, so focusing on the cross-sell as our first one. Even time of day felt a little nuanced for me just because it's something that there might be a bigger challenge in email to figure out before that, but it's still been really successful.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the same. We don't know what we don't know yet. And so I think we're trying to find those small places where we can start and then build an overall kind of omni-channel, machine learning plan. And I think from that, maybe we'll learn where it's not best to use it. But right now, I'm not really sure.
I think channel's an interesting notion for machine learning. I definitely believe it can be adopted there for sure, but I also too think that that is such an individual preference on what channel people want to be communicated with, and we still have so much to learn just as an industry about that overall, how people relate to mobile, how people relate to SMS and email, and I think it's important to leverage machine learning there, but it's also important to stop and to be able to analyze the results quickly too.
Great. So in terms of getting started for our audience, how do you think about where you start? How do you prioritize where you're going to apply? Where do you even think about it? You have an entire marketing program. You can optimize any number of different things. How do you start thinking about it? Where do you start from?
So machine learning is amazing, but I don't want to knock heuristics. I think heuristics are still a great way to get things done and get them done really fast. Machine learning takes a ton of work and a ton of time and a ton of resources, so you need to dedicate them only to your biggest challenges. So if you've been using heuristics on something that is your biggest KPI, you need to move that year and you haven't been able to move it all year, that might be something that's worth dedicating resources to it. But if you can do a simple heuristics multivariate test and actually reach significance in that test, then you should leverage all those options before you cost the company a ton of money doing machine learning.
Related to what I said before, we're really looking from sort of a customer first perspective, and where can we make the customer experience better than what we're doing currently. And by doing that, then do we increase account openings? Do we increase loyalty to the brand? So really looking at it from that perspective as we kind of inch in, and then looking at an overall plan. Yes, we're starting here, but what do we want to do as a whole, and how do we flow that together?
We talked about automated messages and triggered messages earlier, and we're already testing for optimization on that. So from an email marketing perspective, sometimes that is the easiest place to start. I sometimes jokingly talk with a lot of our clients and prospective clients, and it's like, okay, if you haven't tested recently on an automated message, A/B test, it's because, one, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So we kind of just let it run. It's not broke, it's producing revenue, so just let it go. But sometimes doing a test, leveraging machine learning on that is the most simplistic place to start, because what may have produced with a simple A/B test a 3% incremental lift, with machine learning produce a 7% lift. And that 4% difference is a big deal, especially if you're just not having to touch it, and you can just analyze the results and you can pivot quickly leveraging machine learning. So work with what you know works already, start with that, and then see and test and lean into results over time with optimization first.
So I think that's really interesting. We actually got sort of 3 different answers on this, right? Like apply it where you think you get the most bang for your buck, thinking about your customer first, and then thinking about sort of your trigger programs that are a stable place to put it, right? So if you put it on there, then you know that all you really need is scale, right? Abandoned cart, you're only going to get so many people, but the conversion rates are high. So at that point, all you need is scale. But it's something that you can continue optimizing. Whereas if you have batch and blast, then you have kind of your best bang for your buck. So I think at the end of the day, it really depends on where you think you can fit in well with, where can you win, right? Where can you apply this? How do you get it pushed through in your organization? So thinking about once we have identified a place to start with, how do we think about measuring it? How do we measure the performance and the success once we have this launch? So any thoughts on that for the audience?
You have to test it a lot, and it takes a long time. As Brent was saying, it's a very tedious process, and just because you're leveraging machine learning doesn't mean it's going to be amazing. I've run machine learning models that have underperformed my heuristics that were really, really basic, maybe based on only 1 or 2 data points. So again, it is a trial and error process. I think it's really important to reach significance with machine learning just because you're putting a lot of work into it and a lot of time and a lot of resources. So if anybody comes to you and says it's directional, tell them that directional literally means nothing. It's like, it could be directional toward negative, it could be directional toward positive. Like, you're not directional toward significance, you're either significant or you're not. So don't look at lift, look at significance. And then make sure you have enough data. It's like you can't even begin to train a model if you don't have enough data. So it has to be on your biggest products with your most data.
Yeah, I think because we are so early in our journey on this, I don't have an official answer, but I agree with what you're saying here. You have to know what you're measuring and know what you're looking for and know that before you start. Don't just say, oh, we're going to do machine learning and we're going to throw a bunch of stuff, because then you're not going to know. So you still have to have the same sort of test plan that you would for a more basic test, but know where you're trying to get to so you can have some sort of a measurement.
Defining regret is something that we talk about a good bit, and regret is really kind of like the fear of loss of not doing something. So when you're mentioning putting together a plan, right, that you have to be able to say, we want to get to XYZ place within our business if we're going to run this test, that regret, as we talk about it and we define it, is that number, that numeric value that you want to get to. And oftentimes, to be able to measure towards that, you have to be able to discern and understand what are you really missing out on by not doing this, by not running these types of tests, and that's how you measure, and you kind of work your way backwards if you think about it. So look at what's the most optimal type of result, and then monitor consistently over time until you're reaching that ultimate point of, well, the regret's gone. We don't have to have that anymore. So being able to take a look at that model and then work backwards is actually something super interesting and compelling, but you have to be able to analyze and pivot and move faster in order to be able to get to that point of measuring and analyzing and then optimizing upon the regret.
Yeah, so I'm sure everyone in the room is already a data-driven marketer, so every action we do is driven by data, and we're always measuring and analyzing, right? I'm sure. So it sounds like with machine learning, we really need to be even more so focused on that aspect to make sure that things are, actually significant, and we should actually go down this route. So previously we talked about, I asked you guys, how many people are actually using machine learning. It was a little less than half the room. So in terms of who thinks that machine learning should be applied, or that you should incorporate it into your program, by show of hands, how many people think we should be using machine learning? All right, a lot more, right? So obviously, not everyone's using it, but almost everyone thinks that we should be using it. So in terms of, for our audience, why do you think machine learning is so important in applying to your programs?
So my answer is going to be really off the wall and out of left field, but I'm a history major. Has anybody read the book Sapiens here? Okay, it's an amazing book. Everybody should read it. It's by Yuval Harari. I'm not pronouncing his name correctly, but basically in one sentence, he goes through the cognitive revolution and then the agricultural revolution and then 500 years ago, the scientific revolution. And in his sequel to that book, he states that AI is the next revolution. It is going to be looked back on as either, like the cognitive or the agricultural or the scientific revolution. And he has a very pessimistic view of how AI, along with Elon Musk and himself, think that AI will be maybe the downfall of humans, which is a very pessimistic view that I do not share. But personally, I would rather be on the forefront of something than on the tail end of something. So I think it is the future, and I think it's worth getting involved in early on.
I think purely from a marketing perspective, we always need to look for new tools. We always need to look for ways that we can do our jobs better, that we can serve our customers better. And I see machine learning just as another tool that we can use, to make what we send to our customers the best that it can be.
Anna, we share something in common. I have a history degree too.
There we go.
Minor in marketing. But no, it's really interesting. Machine learning really is a way for you guys just to move faster, if you think about it. So being able to use a machine to sort through data sets, to glean insights. And what we have found too, just in working with a lot of our clients that are actively adopting machine learning, is that we're gleaning insights that they never would have seen themselves. And it's because as a human, our minds are kind of programmed by perception, our own perception. So we kind of come into things with like this kind of subconscious expectation already on what we're going to see within our own data. And a machine can oftentimes not just move through data faster, but it also too can show you things that you may never have even been able to glean on your own because of your perception too. And that may shift you from doing something that could be potentially disastrous from a strategic perspective for your business, or take you into moving towards that strategic angle of email messaging and away from that tactical nature of shifting through data, trying to figure it out, and then figuring out how to put it into your production process to optimize it too.
Great. Yeah. So in terms of, and that actually really dovetails well into sort of what I want to ask next is how does it enhance the marketer, right? If we think about it being a tool in your toolbox, how does it enhance you? How does it make you look good? If we're using tools, if we're bringing on vendors, we're bringing on new tools, the goal is to make us look good as marketers, right? We want to have success. We want to show success. So, just a quick summary. I mean, how do you think it really helps you as a marketer to look good?
So I think it frees up time. My boss and my boss's boss and all the way up to Jack Dorsey doesn't really care if I'm segmenting my audience into 1,000 buckets to get the perfect send time. They care about the end result. So if I can automate any of those small tasks that can get the right message to the right customer at the right time, that frees up time for me to focus on more of the strategy and more of the content and the copy, and focus on more of the seller relationship rather than actually just getting them onto a product. So I can focus on a really awesome onboarding series or a really awesome re-engagement series or something that doesn't necessarily leverage machine learning right now, but it frees up my time to focus a lot more time on that.
From a creative team perspective, I don't want the people on my team making these tiny incremental changes and then running tests and then seeing what happens. I want them to be focusing on innovation. I want them to be focusing on what is the next new thing we can do, or how can we design this that it's going to be even better. So I see machine learning as really helping us be more efficient and spend our time on the things that matter versus the small things that are important where we want to get learnings, but something else can do it better than we can.
Yeah, and those are the same types of responses and answers, honestly, that we see our clients leveraging machine learning for. Kristen, you mentioned something about experiments yesterday, and we joked about being a 7th grader, hypotheses and stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, if you think about it, leveraging machine learning is just a simple way to get started experimenting and learning more. Personalization's been a big topic too in email for several years. It's been a big topic even at the conference this week. And, leveraging machine learning can not only help to get towards that ultimate goal of personalization that we all have, but it can help you just move at a faster pace to free up your time set. You're really, and then again to look at how do you not just optimize towards opens and clicks, which we had talked about a little bit during Kristen and Amanda's session yesterday, but also to optimize and leverage machine learning towards conversion. Those are the things that really matter at the end of the day. We're all here to make money, and you can leverage machine learning to optimize towards conversion if you start applying the right data sets to it to begin with.
Yeah, and so efficiency and effectiveness, I think, are two words that kind of come to mind when we talk about machine learning and what it can really bring to the table, right? And to actually piggyback on that in terms of Kristen's presentation, we talk about optimizing towards 100%, right? So you can hit 60% of your, you spend all that time to hit 60%, you optimize 60%, maybe you've got another 20% cohort in there to really focus on. But then when you start getting into the single digit percentiles, then you start making decisions on, well, should I just lump them into the larger group? Should I just treat them the same way? Should I give them a generic message? Because why do we do that? Because we don't have enough time, right? As humans, we literally just don't have enough time. So with machine learning, we can also potentially achieve the scale of that one-to-one, of that personalized communication by not spending all that time digging all the way down into the thousandth segment that we want to reach. So there's definitely some efficiency and effectiveness there. In terms of fit within your organization, like the tech stack fit, like how do you see that happening? Like, do we bring on more data scientists and do this internally? Do we approach vendors and have vendors do this for us? How does all that fit together within the company?
I think it's based on your company culture a lot. Being at a smaller, nimbler company that's like Square, that hasn't been around for as long as maybe like an American Airlines, like I was talking to Raquel about, it's a lot easier to get started. It's a lot easier to be interested in it from the beginning and hire that data science team and hire those product analysts that can do this from the very beginning. So I think it is a lot of cultural. It's hard to switch from a traditional sense if they aren't on board already. So getting them on board early, the better.
I think for us, being a company that's been driven by data and business intelligence from the very beginning, it's more just getting the data scientists to shift their mindset as to where they're applying the information. Because we were one of the biggest mailers of information, for a long time, and used all of the data that we have. So we just need to find the new ways and then essentially have some different teams work together. Previously data analysts were a little bit more siloed. Now they need to work directly with us and, with whatever CRM solution we have, or, figure out how to make those connections in the back end that previously no one even thought about.
Well, and to piggyback on that just really quick, the data scientists can't be siloed because they don't know your products. They really have to be embedded, because if they're going to build a model for you, they have no idea what signals to pull and things like that. So you have to really help inform all of those signals and all of those data points so that you have a model that A, is trained on the right data and is leveraging the right data in the beginning to give you the results that you want.
Okay, I can't answer this honestly. I'm a vendor, so haha. But for us, what we see and really, I think that I gave a presentation about 5-6 months ago on like the myths, misconceptions, and misunderstandings of machine learning, and we designed our model in order to be able to start using machine learning just to have an email address first. And then we're collecting so much data and insights as a platform together that we're able to actually discern, decision make, and glean through those, and then educate the people that are actually leveraging the platform, and then use that information to educate data scientists too simultaneously. So it's a really interesting fit and model for us as a platform. So shameless plug, we're a vendor. I can't answer that honestly.
Yeah, so in terms of the fit, I mean, this all sounds great in terms of if everyone's on the same page and we all want to move forward, we all want to do better at our jobs. But I think there are certain challenges that come with machine learning, right? And just if you think about it, we joke about how it's going to take over jobs. The automation aspect of it's going to replace certain people in certain jobs. Like, what are some of the challenges within your organizations that you've seen, or for Allison? I mean, like working with all the clients, what have you seen people say that have been concerns? Like, what are some of the holdups that prevent someone from launching?
Yeah. We talked about this some during that Fell Upward yesterday, about like how an email team may not be as concerned about using it, but if you have like a creative team, they automatically start to think, oh, well, if somebody's going to take over my copywriting, I don't want that. That's my job that's in jeopardy, right? And it's kind of humorous because like there's always going to be this element to where we understand as humans, just like what consumers want to be communicated about. Like there's this emotional element that machines can't always glean and have. And I think that there's just a simple misunderstanding and misconception about that it's up to an email team, if they are going to start leveraging machine learning, to actually talk to the organization about too. They're going to learn more through this. They're going to become probably better, and they're going to become stronger through this as well. And then we're going to be able to really lean in together. So those are things that we definitely have to talk about. But the really interesting thing being on the technology side is that people are doing this because they do want to move faster. They have this culture of being innovative. And so for them, it's a way to adopt this throughout the organization if they're not doing it in other parts of their company today, too.
I think something that we have said to a lot of our internal partners is that, machine learning may change your focus slightly. You may not be creating the full email. from top to bottom exactly how it's going to look for everyone, but you will still be required and needed to create all of those components. Like people were saying before, you have to have that human to come up with what are the offers, what are the points that we want to get across. So you may not necessarily have that whole thing, but you need those 6 options of a hero banner that you're going to test across everything. So I feel like it could change the focus slightly, but it's never gonna replace us completely.
And I think it's really similar to triggered emails. I think a lot of people that don't actually work in the industry think, oh, you just set up an automation and the little elves handle it and you don't have to do anything about it and you're never going to touch that again and you're going to work on something else. Machine learning is a lot like that, where it was explained to me in my non-data mind of machine learning is, let's say, a dance, and you can teach that machine that dance, and it will know that dance probably better than you, but it won't know any new steps. And so if you want to teach it new steps, you have to retrain that model and add those steps in there for it to learn a new dance or add new moves to that dance. So as your products change, as your customers change, as the political, economic landscape, especially for a company like Square's change, you have to retrain those models with new data that reflects your current time. And that's a lot of work for your team because it probably will change creative and content and copy. It's a lot of time for the data science team, and it's a lot of time for product analytics to actually prove out that it's a successful change to your machine learning model.
Yeah, so maybe Skynet's more devious, and it's really a room full of elves that are handling everything. So maybe you shouldn't be so worried.
It's convenient right here at the holiday times. Talk about elves, Anna. That was great.
We're all about relevance, right? Email marketing, relevance. So if we start implementing machine learning on different programs in your marketing strategy, and they're in different places, what happens when they start colliding potentially, right? And I don't know if anybody's actually thought of this, but if let's say, Anna, you spoke about cross-sell models and even time of day, what happens when it says, how do you start combining those two things together, or even things that may have conflicting things? And says one says time of day at this time for this, but then another model says it's actually you should send it at this time because of something else. Like, how do you start prioritizing which machine learning, which decisions to make?
So I think that's actually our biggest pain point of machine learning. As you saw, we have a ton of products. We have a cross-sell model for each of those, and they don't talk to each other. So technically, somebody could fall in every single one of those buckets. That's probably our biggest pain point and our biggest thing to work on for this upcoming year. Right now, we just have manual, pretty much pacing in our ESP, which is a really, really, really old way of doing it and a really backwards way to actually be controlling a machine learning model. So I think the next thing is to actually build a model that helps prioritize those products for us and not manually. So it prioritizes based on the individual rather than what a bunch of San Francisco tech nerds have decided that is the priority.
Yeah, I think, again, because we're so early, this is something that since we had our discussion and we kind of went through it, that I have really marked as something that we need to think about as we're planning. How do we set up a system that either can account for that or help us deal with that? Or, when we set up different learning models, how do we make sure that they don't collide with each other in a negative way? Or is there a way that you can prioritize and figure out which one is actually better or is going to give you a better revenue or a better conversion or whatever over the other?
Maybe we need machine learning to control all the machine learnings.
Right.
That's interesting. Yeah, just prioritizing what data is important. What you just mentioned too on looking at how machine learning is colliding. Being able to analyze that data in real time, being able to kind of see it pivoting and shifting as you're sitting there running a test with machine learning is super important. But going into that beforehand, saying that these types of criteria sets, X, Y, Z, are most important to us, and here's why, having that down packed, I think is going to help with even setting up that machine learning in the first place, so that you're setting it up to not collide in the beginning too. So that's good for you guys, right? You're almost there.
Yep.
So I think we're running a little out of time. So I want to just kind of give one closing thought, and I'd love for the panelists to give one final parting thought to our audience here. One thing I'd love to say is just, we're a room full of experts in email marketing. Everyone's programs are similar yet different in a way. So as with everything that we always hear and we talk about and want to implement in our own programs, best practice, is not necessarily your practice. And so I think that's something important to consider, right? You hear examples up here of things that we're doing. Time of day may not be something that's relevant for you because you have a certain set time, right? Our morning briefing newsletter goes out in the morning. We're not really going to send that out in the evening since it's a morning newsletter. So again, best practice, not necessarily your practice. Do you guys have anything, a final word, to provide to the audience?
I think two small things. One, be sure that you don't let people get so afraid of something new like this that you don't try it at all, or you don't, explore it and think about options. I think a lot of times things like this come up and we fear for our jobs, or we fear the failure of what if it doesn't work. Let it happen, see where it goes. Piggybacking off of what you said, I think, remember, if you have multiple areas within your business or different lines of business under one overall, umbrella, know that testing and results and your plan could be different for all of those different lines of business as well. So don't assume that what worked for one is going to be what's best for the other, because you have those lines of business for a reason. You have those different segments for a reason. You really have to think about it on a very small level.
Yeah, I'd piggyback off of that too. We say, don't be scared to start, right? I oftentimes have found that when we start to talk about machine learning with people, sometimes they're scared to ask questions, and sometimes we're scared to ask questions because we don't want to sound like we're stupid about it. And it is so new, even though it's not, right? It's been around for decades, really, but it's newer for this industry, and we're really just getting into it. So don't be scared to ask stupid questions. We love stupid questions. Those are helpful, but also too, think about not having everything perfect before you get started. So we talk about having a data scientist team, we talk about how expensive it is, and we're really blessed to be entering into this era where we don't have to always have everything perfect and in place before we can get started. And machine learning is becoming more affordable, specifically for this industry, as we start to have new technologies emerge and pop up. So don't be scared. Don't think you have to have everything perfect, and don't be afraid of having to have complete organizational support and having a lot of resources to put behind it too. It's not that complicated today.
I agree with all of that, and I think you need to at least start the conversation, but leverage the tools you have right now. I was actually in a conference room with a senior leader, and they kind of looked at me and they're like, what's the difference between machine learning and predictive modeling? And I sat there with the dumbest look on my face, and I was like, I literally have no idea. And I'm sure my data scientists, my statisticians would have an awesome answer to that. But I do think there are solutions that have been around for a really long time that do still really work. So really great stat models and things like that, you can leverage and get similar results. It's worth starting the conversation for machine learning, but it does take a little while to get up and running, especially like us who's built everything in-house. But at least get the conversation started and move toward the direction.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, let's get some questions. Yep.
My least favorite.
End applause, end applause. Sorry, I didn't mean to step on Kevin and his panel's applause.
I guess I'm curious in that, I work for an ESP as well. A ton of the great ESPs are here in the room. Probably everybody in the room has either participated in an RFP or answered an RFP on ESP. It's a very mature place to be. But here in machine learning, at least in my, I do the same job Allison does, essentially. It seems like there's 100 of them out there talking about AI and how to collect data, 360-degree view of the customer, and how they do it. And there's probably, and I don't think I'm exaggerating, there's a new one that pops up every month. And I find it very hard to, it's my job to keep up with it, and I can't keep up with it. So for you guys, I guess I'm curious, and I'd love your thoughts on, although many of you know how to create an RFP to pick a new ESP, how do you do this to pick an AI vendor? Is it more service? Is it more product? Is it a combination of the two? There's so many of them out there. How many of my, all the ESPs here have thousands of customers. There's these AI folks out there that have 5 to 50 customers, and they're all over the place, and they all do these different things. So when you go back to work next week, and you're like, yeah, we need to do this and take it seriously, how do you get started, right? And I don't know, I guess that's my question, how do you get started in this? How do you even craft an RFP to go, this is the direction we need to go?
So I probably will have the unpopular opinion here, but as I work for a bigger company that has more resources, I think it's really important to build it in-house. I think because it's such a new technology, you shouldn't be putting, especially with us who has financial data, I don't think you should be leveraging all of that data on these really, really new vendors that maybe don't totally know what they're doing. I think hiring in-house and letting them evolve with your product and with your customers and with the technology is a lot better way than putting it in somebody else's hands.
I think, obviously, being financial also, we have some of the same concerns. And we are probably looking a little bit more at a hybrid, but we also are not going to be putting our data into somebody else's system. And I do know that a lot of the different AI vendors that are out there require you to have your data with them. So that could be a place to start too if you're looking. What do they require? Can they connect to you with an API? Can you, still utilize the features but without handing over all of your data? And is that important to your company? Or are you a smaller company and you don't have the data backend and you don't have all of the scientists? And one of those companies that does have all of those features may be a benefit to you. I think you probably have to look at it from both ways.
Yeah, on the vendor side, Russ, too. I personally, like the whole notion of an RFP is kind of outdated, really, especially as it relates to machine learning and AI technologies, too. I would say if somebody's not allowing you to test that, do a proof of concept or something, it's probably not even worth going with, from our perspective. And it is so new. There is so much more that pops up every day that we still have to learn about. I do not envy anybody that has to make a decision in today's world about things that are machine learning or AI oriented, especially as it relates to platforms. But I will say, if somebody doesn't allow you to test it, it's probably garbage, and I wouldn't go with it.
Yeah, and be careful, right? Like we didn't dive into this, but like be careful of the terms, right? AI, machine learning, deep learning, the concepts of all these things, they're slightly different. So everyone's going to say, I have AI, but is it really true AI? Like, is it thinking through? Is it taking all the data and actually coming up with the next best action? Or is it just simply saying, I'm going to take this one data set and optimize to something, right? That's just machine learning. That's one segment of it. So be careful of, that new one every month that pops up to say something like that.
And I think that's a great topic to take up in the roundtable later as to how to start. Kevin, panel, thanks again. Give them another round.